Hello everyone. Today I've got a brand new series of spine-chilling horror stories for you. I'm really curious to know which corner of the world you're listening from. Let me know in the comments below. Now, let's get started. It was a rainy night, the kind where the rain pounded against the windows so hard it sounded like an army of drummers outside. I was alone in the house, curled up on the couch, mindlessly flipping through channels. The television screen flickered, and every few seconds a flash of lightning would momentarily flood the room with a harsh white light, casting sharp shadows on the walls. The storm outside seemed to be getting worse, and I could hear the wind howling as it whipped through the trees. I had just started to settle in when my phone rang, cutting through the low hum of the television and the roar of the rain. The screen lit up with an unknown number. It was almost midnight, so I hesitated before picking it up. Who would be calling at this hour? Against my better judgment, I answered. There was a moment of silence on the other end, just the faint sound of static, and then a low, muffled voice. I couldn't make out the words at first, but then it came through clearly. "Please check your back door." Before I could respond or ask who it was, the line went dead. I stared at the phone, my heart beginning to race. The voice had been so calm, almost too calm. I glanced toward the kitchen, where the back door was. The lights were off, and only the faint glow from the living room TV illuminated the hallway leading to the back of the house. For a moment, I stood there, frozen in place, debating what to do. Maybe it was a prank call, or maybe I had misheard. But something about the way the voice had said it made me uneasy. The rain continued to pound against the windows, and I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Finally, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to take a look. I grabbed a flashlight from the drawer and walked slowly down the hallway toward the back door. Each step felt heavy, and my heart thudded in my chest. When I reached the door, I peered through the small frosted glass window. The rain was pouring down so heavily that I could barely see anything outside. I took a deep breath, unlocked the door, and slowly pulled it open, just a crack. A gust of wind blew rain into my face, and I blinked, wiping the water away. I shined the flashlight out onto the back porch, and that's when I saw it. A set of muddy footprints leading from the back gate up to my door. The prints were fresh, the edges still sharp, not yet washed away by the rain. I felt a jolt of fear shoot through me. Someone had been here, just moments ago. The footprints were large, too large to belong to a child, and they looked heavy, like whoever had made them was dragging their feet. I stepped back, closing the door and locking it quickly. I double-checked the lock, my hand trembling slightly. I looked down at my phone, considering calling the police, but I hesitated. What would I tell them? That I'd received a strange call and found footprints outside? It didn't seem like enough. I decided to check the number that had called me. I hit redial and the phone began to ring, but almost immediately a message played. The number you have dialed is not in service. My heart was pounding now. The call had come from a number that didn't exist. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. The rain outside seemed to grow even louder, as if the storm was closing in around me. Suddenly, the phone buzzed in my hand. Another call from the same unknown number. I felt a chill go through me as I answered, pressing the phone to my ear. The same low, muffled voice came through, clearer this time. "Did you check the back door?" I swallowed hard, forcing myself to speak. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice sounding small and shaky. There was a pause on the other end, just the sound of static, and then the voice spoke again, almost in a whisper. "Look outside." The call ended abruptly. My hand was shaking as I lowered the phone. I turned slowly, almost against my will, and looked out the kitchen window that faced the backyard. The rain was still pouring down, and the wind was howling, but in the faint light, I could see something that made my blood run cold. There in the distance, just beyond the reach of the porch light, was a figure standing motionless. They were too far away to see clearly, but I could make out the outline of a person, standing still in the rain, facing my house. I felt a surge of panic and quickly closed the curtains, my breath coming in short gasps. I backed away from the window, my mind racing. Who was out there, and what did they want? I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, my fingers fumbling over the buttons. The dispatcher answered, and I quickly explained what had happened, my voice trembling as I spoke. The dispatcher assured me that an officer would be sent to check the area. I thanked them and hung up, but my anxiety didn't lessen. I glanced back at the window, half expecting to see the figure pressed against the glass. But the curtains were still drawn and everything was quiet, except for the relentless rain. Minutes passed, feeling like hours. I kept glancing at the clock, waiting for the sound of sirens. Then, just as I started to feel a small sense of relief, my phone buzzed again. A new message from the unknown number. Don't turn around. I felt every hair on my neck stand up. I couldn't help it. I turned around. There, just outside the window, was the outline of a hand pressed against the glass, fingers splayed wide, the rain running down the pane like tears. I stumbled back, my heart hammering in my chest, unable to breathe. In the next moment, the hand slowly slid down, leaving a smear of water behind, and then it was gone. The sirens finally sounded in the distance, growing louder as they approached. I stayed where I was, frozen until the police arrived. They searched the area but found nothing. No footprints, no signs of anyone, just the rain washing everything away. When they left, I was alone again, the storm still raging outside. My phone was silent, but I knew I wouldn't sleep that night. The message still burned in my mind, don't turn around. To this day, I never found out who called me that night, or why. But every time it rains, I can't help but glance toward the back door, half expecting to see those footprints again, leading up to my door. My name is Megan, I'm 29, and I live in a small town called Springfield in Oregon. It's close to Eugene and usually very quiet. The population isn't large and most people here know each other. I work as an elementary school teacher and enjoy seeing the children's innocent smiles and the satisfaction of teaching them. Since the school is nearby, I rent an old house on the outskirts of town by myself. The house is surrounded by other old cottages and scattered trees, with a dense forest behind it. When I first moved in, I loved it here. Even though the house was a bit old, the neighbors were friendly, and at night I could hear the rain tapping on the leaves, which made me feel calm and at peace. That night it was raining heavily, and the air was filled with the dampness of late autumn. I had just finished a long day at work and felt exhausted. The rain outside grew heavier, and the thunder shook the windows. I curled up on the couch in the living room, watching an old movie, trying to relax. The room was dimly lit, with only the flickering blue light from the TV illuminating the walls. On a night like this, I didn't expect any visitors. It was almost midnight, and I felt my eyelids growing heavy. I was about to turn off the TV and head to bed when suddenly I heard a faint knocking at the door. In a town as quiet as this, the sound felt out of place. I froze for a moment, puzzled, then got up and walked toward the door. Who would come here at this hour? With a slight sense of unease, I peered through the peephole. Rain splattered on the porch, and a figure wearing a dark hooded coat stood outside, his shadow stretched long by the porch light. The person had their head lowered, and I couldn't make out their face. I felt a bit nervous, unsure if I should open the door. After a moment's hesitation, I decided to test the waters. "Who's there?" I tried to keep my voice calm and steady. There was no answer from outside. The rain grew louder, drowning out all faint noises. I waited for a few moments, my unease growing with every passing second. The figure outside remained still. I asked again, "Is there something you need? Do you need help?" Still no response. Feeling increasingly uneasy, I turned to head back to the living room, but suddenly I heard the person muttering to themselves, their voice raspy and urgent. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but their tone sent a shiver down my spine. A few seconds later, the figure began to move. I thought they might be leaving, but instead, they walked around to the side of the house, their footsteps mingling with the rain, faint and disjointed. I stood frozen in place, holding my breath, trying to track their movements. Suddenly, I heard a soft knock on the back door. Panic surged through me as I rushed to the back door and saw a blurred shadow trying to peer through the window. I quickly drew the curtain shut, feeling cold sweat on my palms. For the next few minutes, I stood by the door, completely still, listening intently to the sounds outside. The rain was still the dominant noise, but I could hear faint footsteps, as if the person was testing each window, searching for a way in. My heart was pounding, as if it would leap out of my chest. Then, without warning, the whole house plunged into darkness. The power had gone out. A wave of fear washed over me as I grabbed my phone, using its dim light to see around me. I immediately dialed 911, whispering my address and describing the situation to the operator. She tried to reassure me, saying that officers were on their way and urging me to stay calm. Just then, I heard the door handle turn softly. I cautiously moved toward the front door and locked it with all my strength, but I knew that my action had confirmed my presence inside. The knocking grew louder, and I heard the person whisper, "Let me in, I just want to talk." His voice was low and insistent, with a strange sense of urgency. A few seconds later, all other sounds stopped abruptly, leaving only the rain hitting the roof and windows. I held my breath, straining to hear any other noises. The rain was too loud. All I could hear was the faint sound of breathing outside the door. My heart was racing, and I felt all the blood rushing through my veins. Just then, I heard the faint sound of sirens in the distance. The police were getting closer, and a small sense of relief washed over me. I quickly walked to the kitchen, grabbed a small knife from the drawer, and held it tightly in my hand. A few minutes later, as the sirens grew louder, I suddenly heard a faint crack from the window behind me. I spun around and saw a hand, wearing a hooded sleeve, slowly reaching through a gap in the window that hadn't been fully closed. They seemed to be trying to push the window open. My heart nearly stopped, and I shouted, "I've already called the police! They're on their way!" The hand paused for a moment, then quickly withdrew. A few seconds later, I heard hurried footsteps outside, moving away. The sirens finally stopped in front of the house, and a few officers quickly entered my yard. I opened the door, my heart still pounding, and pointed to where the person had been standing moments earlier, but there was no one there. The police searched the entire house and surrounding area but found no sign of the intruder. They only found some muddy footprints under the window and rain-soaked tracks on the ground. They told me it was probably just a burglar trying to break in, but I knew in my heart that their intent might have been far more sinister. After that night, I could no longer sleep peacefully. Although the stranger never returned, I always felt like there were eyes watching me from the darkness, waiting for another chance to appear. No matter what, I knew that the fear and unease left from that night had permanently scarred me. It was a night of torrential rain, and I was home alone. The rain outside was heavy and relentless, pounding against the windows like someone persistently knocking on the glass. I turned off the lights and slipped into bed, hoping to fall asleep early. But for some reason, an unsettling feeling hung over me, making it difficult to relax. I tossed and turned for what felt like hours before finally drifting off. At around 2 a.m, I was jolted awake by a strange noise. It was soft, like footsteps, or perhaps something being dragged across the ground. My heart tightened as I listened. The sound seemed to be coming from outside the window. Through a small gap in the curtains, I could see something moving, but the rain was too heavy to make out what it was. I tried to calm myself down, convincing myself that it was probably just the wind rustling some tree branches or something harmless. But the noise didn't stop. It grew clearer, more distinct. I sat up in bed, my heart racing. After a few moments of hesitation, I gathered enough courage to walk to the window and pull the curtain back slightly. Outside, everything was pitch black, and the rain blurred my view. I took a deep breath and squinted through the darkness, catching a faint glimpse illuminated by a distant streetlight. There were footprints, clear, muddy footprints, in the front yard. My heart skipped a beat. Who would be walking around outside at this time of night? I crouched down, peering through the window to get a better look. The footprints stretched from the edge of the yard up to the porch steps. I could almost feel the weight of each step pressing into the ground. Despite the pouring rain, the prints remained distinct, as if they had just been made. I took a deep breath, my mind racing with thoughts. Could it be a lost traveler? Or maybe a child from the neighborhood out playing? But in this weather at this hour, who would be wandering around in the rain? I pulled out my phone and opened the camera, taking a few photos of the footprints. The lighting was poor, and the images came out blurry. I felt a strange urge to see them more clearly, so I decided to go to the front door and take a closer look. As I reached the door, I hesitated, that uneasy feeling growing stronger. The sounds of the wind and rain outside seemed to grow louder. My hand froze on the doorknob, and I suddenly realized, if it really was a stranger, would opening the door put me in danger? Just as I was debating with myself, I heard a soft drip from outside the door, like water dripping onto the ground. I pressed my ear to the door, but I couldn't make out anything distinct, just the wind and the rain. My heart pounded as I decided not to open the door. I returned to the bedroom to continue watching from the window. I closed the bedroom door behind me, pulled back the curtains again, and peered outside. The rain was still coming down hard, and the footprints were still there, but this time I noticed something strange. The distance between the prints seemed irregular, as if someone had been deliberately pacing in a strange manner, and each footprint was deep, unnaturally deep. I picked up my phone and considered calling my neighbor, but before I could, I heard the drip sound again, louder this time, and unmistakably close. My pulse quickened, and I stood still, straining to hear anything else. A few seconds later, the noise stopped. All I could hear was the rain. I let out a shaky breath, thinking the wind must have picked up and drowned out the sounds I heard. Then suddenly, a sharp knock echoed against my window. I jumped back, accidentally bumping into a chair. Outside, through the rain-smeared glass, I saw a shadow, vague but unmistakable, pressed right up against the window. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The figure was standing perfectly still, head slightly bowed, as if looking at something. My hands started to shake as I grabbed my phone, preparing to call the police. But just as I dialed, the shadow outside vanished. I stared back out the window, seeing nothing but the rain and streaks of water on the glass. I didn't dare let my guard down. I kept my eyes fixed on the window. Then the doorbell rang. The sound was crisp and piercing in the silent night, and my heart raced wildly in my chest. I slowly made my way to the door, peering through the peephole. No one was there. Just the rain pooling on the porch, forming a small puddle. I was about to breathe a sigh of relief when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A new set of footprints in the puddle, leading from my front door into the darkness beyond. I quickly snapped a photo of the footprints with my phone. Just then, my screen lit up with a text from an unknown number. The message contained just one line: "I know you're watching." My stomach dropped. I glanced back outside, but the footprints had already disappeared, washed away by the rain. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, not even when dawn finally broke and the rain stopped. When I stepped outside at first light, there was nothing but a few patches of mud where the prints had been. It was as if they had never existed, but I knew it had been real, because on my phone, I still had that blurry photo of the footprints, proof that something had been there. That's today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe to my channel, and turn on the notification bell. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.